Hello, everyone. My name is Nate Chandler Smith. I'm a senior software engineer at Integral. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on pair programming. Let's get started. I've got quite a bit to cover, including a demo with Sean Frost, another one of our senior software engineers here at Integral. Like I said, there is a bunch to cover, so let's hold questions until the end. Thank you. All right, there's going to be three things that we're going to cover today. You will learn about the benefits of, the healthy signs of, and the best practices in pair programming. I will also tie these back to the things I showed on the earlier slide and in the byline of the webinar around the art of building great teams. Let's first uncover the benefits of pair programming. The bottom line is that it improves the product. And it does so in three ways, and they really all tie together. A product with fewer bugs is likely to be more understandable, especially by the devs, and it's going to take less time to get that product to market successfully. Now, here I am in a webinar, and I'm going to touch on something as nebulous as code quality. In this talk, I'm not going to define for you and your team what quality code is. Instead, when I say quality code, I am referring to the standards and norms of your team, whatever they may be, that have been set for your team. Hopefully there are standards and norms for your team, and hopefully they were set by the team, for the team, but I digress. You know, tough problems often arise in programming. By getting two minds on the problem, more solutions are explored, allowing the best solution to arise. Therefore, we create better solutions and we hold each other accountable because we are pairing in intense collaborative sessions, right? And so we're holding each other accountable to team norms and standards. As we all know, hopefully this isn't news, it's impossible for a single person to be an expert in all the things required for a successful product. This is why we work in teams in the first place. But by upping our game in pair programming and writing code in close collaboration with one another, we spread knowledge about our solution specifically and industry standards and knowledge more generally. In this way, not only the product is improved, but also the team itself is improved as steel sharpens steel. Now, it might be a bit of a surprise, and it was a bit to me when I first started digging into pair programming to uncover that you can actually shorten time. So much, resistance that I think we see to pair programming is that, oh my goodness, things are going to take twice as long. Why would I even consider doing it? Well, let's step back for just a moment and think this through, and let's see, let's also think about some other things in our industry that we also know to be true. If you look at the life cycle of the product or the feature, it has been found that pair programming actually increases the speed of value delivery in software. So let's zoom out for just a moment, right? So regardless of whether or not you're pair programming, right? And regardless of whether the team is practicing pair programming, the team performance itself, even if you're soloing, right, is going to be rocky when the team first starts. The same is true in pair programming. As team performance improves with time, so does the performance of pair programming. And as it does this, what can we expect? We'd expect that less bugs make it into production, right? And as we've already talked about, pair programming is going to improve the product. And so eventually pairing takes about, depending on what you read and what's happening, pair programming can take about 15% longer than soloing. So if you consider the time that is spent fixing bugs, then pair programming can actually outpace soloing in speed. And once again, in my mind, this highlights this false choice of product or code quality and speed. As teams consider the full life cycle of product development and value delivery, particularly as DevOps and CI/CD are adopted, as with pairing, you will increase the chance that someone with these strong backgrounds in DevOps and CI/CD influences each and every feature that goes into production. And so, as I've already said, there is a strong correlation between continuous delivery and feature velocity. And this all ties back to delivering an improved product faster. All right, so, I was chatting a little bit there, right, about, pair programming maybe being a little bit rocky, and just like everything, right, if you try something new, and even if you've been doing it for a while, we can always improve, right? So, like, what are these best practices that if we adopt them, right, we can get over that learning hurdle quicker, right? All right, so a few tips for successful programming. Here's the big one. Slow down and communicate. This was one of the earliest things that I learned when I started pair programming, is that we need to slow down and communicate. Take time to understand each other and the problem that we're trying to solve. Take the time to get to know one another. Also, you need to plan the work together. This becomes really important in ways that we're going to discuss later. And also make sure that you're listening to your partner. Specifically, let's talk about active listening a little bit. Be fully present, no distractions, right? Let's be focused in that moment, and let's focus on the task at hand. If you can, it's also really important to turn on your videos. Up to 65% of the communication that we provide to our other wonderful humans takes place non-verbally, right? And something that I pay particular attention to, if I'm on a call with somebody or in pair programming with somebody and the video isn't on, I really try to pay attention to the tone of their voice, because in the absence of video, that's what I got to work on. I mean, obviously there's what they're saying. And, try to be kind. Don't be bossy. Ask questions. If somebody says, if somebody did something you didn't expect, ask questions. We're talking about exploring alternative viewpoints. We're talking about, exploration. Give each other a chance to do that. And what that often looks like is somebody doing something you didn't expect. So, like, embrace that, allow it to happen. More tips. So one of the things that we talk about, right, in CI/CD is integrate early and often, right? And I think this is one of these things that we do as engineers, as engineering practices that also can be applied to like other things, like our other engineering practices, right? Pair a little bit each day. Keep practicing, keep working on it. And similarly, when I coach on iterative development, emergent design, and TDD, I often find myself telling people, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Similarly, pair programming is awkward and uncomfortable. And if we can get used to still operating when we feel uncomfortable and awkward, this can really be a powerful thing. And something else that I learned early on, and like, even if you put me into a new team, or if I wind up in a new team, I realize, oh my goodness, pairing is exhausting. It's okay to take a break, yo. We take breaks anyway. We are taking breaks, right? And so, it's still okay to like not pair. And arguably there's times when you don't want to pair, right? Like, if we've got to split to do some research, right? One of the patterns that I like a lot, right, is diverging to find a whole bunch of different things that we could try, and then converging on the one or ones and iterating through them that we think are going to work. Now, anytime you split up to do research, just like playing a spike, let's make sure that we're bringing something back, right? Because as we're going to get into this really, really works when everybody is active and everybody is participating. All right, so a little bit on the logistics of pair programming. They're all right here. You can read them. What is behind all of these recommendations? is increasing and creating an environment, right, where people are better able to collaborate with other humans. And the best way to do that is if control of the system at any given time can happen by either person, right? If I'm pairing with you and you can take control at any given time, then there's an element of I'm allowing the other person to take control, and we are actively collaborating on something, especially if we're doing it remotely, right? Now, that said, it's also an anti-pattern to just start like grabbing the keyboard and mouse and just start ramming things into the code. That's not what we want to do either, right? It's about it's about the ability to get to have control of something at any given time. And not only does it support collaboration, but it makes for more effective programming sessions that we're going to get to in just a moment. So something that maybe isn't talked enough, I think, when we talk about pair programming is not just the pairing, right? It's tough to pair on a project with just two people, because when there's only two people on a project, then I can't really rotate with anyone, right? And if pairing is about tearing knowledge, and if pairing is about tearing down knowledge silos, and I'm always pairing with the same people, then we've really replaced engineering individual knowledge silos with pairwise knowledge silos, right? And so, a lot of teams rotate at some cadence that works for them. Something to consider too is we're still humans. We still have the freedom to apply thought. I hope we have the freedom to apply thought. And so there are some situations here around blockages and quarrels where I think it can be really effective, to do a pair rotation to get, and again, it's about bringing the right minds to the problem at hand at the right time. And again, avoid pairing with the same person for too long. Call these pairages. It's a bit of a team room smell. Again, if we're really serious about breaking down knowledge silos and collaborating, let's do it across the team, not just with someone that we have affinity with for whatever reason. All right, signs of healthy pairing. So what does this look like? How do we know that we are pairing the right way? And so how can we get past the rocky bits? How do we know that we're getting past the rocky bits sooner, right? All right. Well, people are talking, right? I've talked about people listening. I've talked about talking. People should be talking, right? And a little bit earlier, right, I was talking about pair programming improving quality, improving the quality of the product, whatever that looks like, right? And so like we should see those things, like we should be able to observe these things happening in real time as people collaborate with each other. And we really should see like the sessions becoming more comfortable. Maybe people are pairing longer. And one of the things that I think is really important is to do a pair retro. Maybe the session didn't go as well as you wanted. Talk about that. I had the fortune of, when I was early on learning about and understanding pair programming for myself early on, I had the fortune of being in an organization that one of our philosophies was retro all the things. And so take an opportunity to retro a pairing session. It could be really, really interesting what you can uncover when you talk with people about some of the challenges that you might be having. All right, so pair programming patterns, right? So, what are some, what does pair programming look like? How can we get through the rocky bits faster? All right, so there's certain models in pair programming that give rise to certain patterns, right? And I think it makes sense, right? Now I'm going to label people for just a moment. It probably makes sense. You wouldn't want to pair, a couple newbies together, and maybe you wouldn't want to pair a couple negativists together. Now I've just labeled people. So let's also keep in mind that the above roles and dispositions are fluid, right? If you put me tomorrow into a .NET project, it's not really my jam. I might be floundering a little bit. But on the other hand, if you give me time, I'm going to learn, right? And I think many people that have a growth mindset are going to be like that. So let's keep in mind that maybe somebody's having a bad day, or let's keep in mind that people can learn, right? And so I would expect that these labels would be fluid as people would grow throughout the project, especially right as we talk with each other and collaborate, right? All right. So pair programming patterns, right? So both people should be active when pairing. There are no spectators during pairing. It's really important for both people to talk about the problem before starting and agree on a solution. More on that later. More about, one of the things that I like to do is chat about what we're going to do in the session, right? And that's something that has been demonstrated to help pair programming sessions. All right, so the roles in pair programming. We have a driver. That's the person writing the code, right? And then we've got the other person in there, the navigator. They're going to be checking the code and providing guidance. Both are going to talk about and collaborate on the problem that we're trying to solve. It is certainly a smell and an anti-pattern if the driver, well, either one really, right? If either person like sits down and by themselves comes up with a checklist or a bunch of stickies, then that's going to be what we're going to do for the session. That's not what putting two minds on a problem looks like, does it? Right? So again, at the start of a session, it's a natural, healthy thing to do. Talk about the solution to the problem at hand. So both the driver and navigator should talk. Both the driver, and it may not be obvious what the driver, like as the driver, you know what you're going to do. It may not be obvious what you're doing or about to do. And as the navigator, you should be navigating. I mean, it's certainly not obvious what you're thinking. And so one of the things that's really important, and it requires feedback, it requires input from both people, and that's finding the highest level of abstraction that is comfortable for the session, right? Because that helps us stay comfortable, and it certainly helps us move faster. If I'm navigating and I'm giving somebody a very, very low level of instructions, for example, how to get to the grocery store, and I'm telling back out of the driveway, turn left onto the street, and really going, in a serious level of detail, that's certainly going to be longer and more uncomfortable if I'm giving those instructions to somebody that already knows the area in which we live, right? I could simply say, just go out to this main arterial and take that down to the other big arterial, and then the store is going to be right there on the right. Now, some folks, depending on the situation, might need lower level of detail. And this is the kind of thing that the driver and the navigator need to talk about and land on. So, make sure that you're talking with the other person and asking questions and getting feedback. So again, the navigator should be helping check code quality. Some folks call it a review in situ while the code is being written. And the driver is giving, the navigator is giving the driver the box in which they are operating, right? So the navigator should be minding the to-do list, and then depending on the level of abstraction, say, well, maybe we need to add a test, that takes this input and then checks it against, this expected output. And then again, give each other latitude to improvise and explore. And again, be active. Be observing. You can't guide someone if you don't know what they're doing, so please be paying attention. And again, the driver should be talking. And really, the navigator, right, might feed you something and it may throw you off a little bit because they're giving you the box in which you're going to operate, right? try to improvise that, challenge yourself a little bit. But if it really is confusing for you, then it's okay to say stop. Like, we need to chat about this a little bit. I'm not quite sure what you mean. And, you know, over time, through these interactions of you know, improvising a little bit and maybe not doing your first impulse as the driver, eventually you learn to trust one another and you kind of learn to appreciate that other perspective, right? Because one of the things I was talking about earlier, right, is sharing knowledge and collaboration. And like, if like, one way to think about that is that if I'm not open to trying something new, then how open, you know, what am I missing out on? Like, what else am I missing out on learning and exploring? Not only maybe in the task at hand, in this code base and the task at hand, but maybe there's something, but maybe there's a quirk in the language that I'm just now picking up. Maybe there's some industry knowledge. I'm sure there's industry knowledge that I'm sitting here I'm not aware of, right? So it behooves me to pay attention and maybe try something a little bit different, even if it's not my first inclination, and especially arguably if it's not my first inclination. All right. So we've gone through driver and navigator. That's one of that's one of the patterns. And then another pattern is something called ping pong pairing, and it's used closely with TDD. That's where I find myself doing ping pong, and it's really geared that way. So one person is going to write a failing test. The second person makes that test pass, and then writes the next failing test. And then that goes back to the first person, make that test pass, writes a failing test. At some point, code gets refactored here. I usually am not too formal about who does the refactoring. Usually that's a conversation, and you know, it happens in my experience. You know, the refactors just happen naturally through conversation with my pair partner. And there's something called strong style pairing, and you know, this is something that is really geared towards knowledge transfer. And maybe there's an aspect of it that's maybe a little bit counterintuitive, in the sense, you know, that if I am learning, maybe I'm new on a project, or maybe I'm learning a new language, right? Well, then I'm going to want to drive. And the person that has the project context and or, you know, knows the tech stack better than I, they're going to be the navigator. And in this case, I would expect a lower level of abstraction in the instructions that I'm giving, or I would expect a lower level of abstraction in the instructions that I would be getting from the navigator, right? Because like I don't know enough to operate at that higher level of abstraction. So we're going to go a little bit slower. These sessions are going to be much more intense. And, you know, keep in mind, again, everything I said about taking breaks, it's okay to take a break, it's okay to research, all of that still applies. All right, something that's kind of interesting is evil pairing. And in evil pairing, the driver can't see the test. The navigator adds a test that the driver can't see, and then it's on the driver to make the test pass. Now, why in the world would you do this, right? Like, way in the past, I viewed this as some kind of team building activity. But if you look at it, what are we really doing here? Arguably, the evil is not being thrust upon the driver, although the driver is in the unfortunate case of not having all of the information and doing whatever, hopefully simple thing they can. And then that's the key, right? I don't know what the test is, so I'm going to have to, you know, think about it, hopefully implement a really, really simple solution. And then it's going to be on the navigator that if I did something that the navigator didn't expect, well, guess what, navigator? You get to write a better test. And so, you know, an element of evil pairing is to help us as navigators learn to write and steer the driver toward writing better tests. All right, so let's do the pair programming demo. Everybody, welcome Sean Frost. They're going to be joining me. And now, we're going to do this pair programming demo. It might get a little bit awkward here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute because we are going to switch over to a tool that we're going to use to do the pair programming. So if you give me just a minute, I'll be right back.
While we're
Hi, Sean.
swapping screens, howdy.
Yeah, I know.
I just
Let's see
wanted to
here.
say that I adore ping pong because it gamifies coding, and you know, it's just a lot of fun.
All right. Hopefully.
Okay, I see your screen.
Okay. So, all right. Trying to keep Zoom chat here. Okay, good. All right. So, Sean, you can hopefully see IntelliJ.
Yep.
All right, wonderful. And hopefully everybody can see IntelliJ too. So
Nope.
somebody drop in chat. No?
Nope. I'm not seeing it in Zoom.
Okay. Oh, that's right. I got to share. Still have to share. Okay. All right.
There you go.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank
Now
you.
I
Now,
overlay it.
great. Now Zoom. Okay, great. Zoom chat disappeared on me, and maybe that's okay. Um, All right. Sean, can you mind Zoom chat if something comes up? Okay.
I will try.
Yeah. Oh, there it is.
Sounds like
There it
people can see
is.
it.
All right, wonderful. Okay, good. All right, thank you. All right. So let's you wanna so do we want to sketch out first a little bit like what the next steps are in this thing, and maybe it's just Toto's in the tests?
Sure.
All right.
Should we tell our viewers what we're working on?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. So we are working on okay, I guess there we go. Okay, trying to get IntelliJ to render the markdown. Okay, so we are doing a bowling kata, and we grabbed it from some online coding dojo plays. You can see the rules here. We've already bootstrapped a little bit of the tests for it, and I'll leave the scoring up on the left, and then Sean and I can chat about what we're going to do next. So what are we doing next, yo?
Well, we got to make that test pass. But after that, so that's doing a single frame. Looks like it's a non-strike, non-spare.
Yep.
Shall we go for 2 non-strike, non-spare frames to
Sure.
see that it accumulates?
On strike. Great.
On strike.
2 non-strike, non-strike, non. All right. And then what else do we want to do? Maybe we want to do a, are we ready for a spare at that point?
Yeah, let's try a spare.
What
So
would that be
spare
creative?
frame followed by normal frame.
Yep. Or we could
Or
call
I
that a
guess it's
date
called
frame.
an open frame.
Open frame.
I think so.
Okay. And then do we want to go after one more? Do we think we can?
Oh,
Because like,
where are we at? We're
yeah,
at,
at that point
we
we've done
might
2
not have more time.
right.
Maybe we do want to do we want to do ooh. Let's
Yeah,
reevaluate once we've got that.
okay. Yeah, yeah.
See where
I'm
we're
doing a
at.
time check. Yeah, I'm doing a time check. I'm feeling, reasonable about the time. All right.
Okay.
We will reevaluate. Maybe I guess I like living on the edge. Maybe we won't even chat about the evil pairing case, and you could just write a test. I have no idea like what it's even going to do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be yeah.
All right.
All right. I know, right? Crazy talk. All right. Totally gonna
Yeah,
copy
Ben,
some
we're not
pasta
going to
here.
get to strike followed by a strike followed by a spare in this demo.
All right, so score. All right, and then so we'll just go two, none,
Oh, good point, Michael.
throws. All right. So I'm gonna jump down here, and I'm just going to do. Let's see. We need so two non-strike, non-spares. I want to make these like unique, right? So
Yeah,
I don't know. 8. Ooh, 68. Let's still make it
68.
valid.
That's a
'cause we're
valid pin count. Yeah.
yeah. All right. And then so I've got to go back up here. Okay. And so now I demonstrate I continue to demonstrate my lack of knowledge of bowling. I look at that first frame and I think of 5. I look at that second frame and I think of 14. Does that sound right to people that actually bowl?
6. Yeah, that looks like 14.
Okay, cool. We can do math today. That's exciting.
Yes.
Nailed it. All right.
We're doing
Yeah.
better than practice, Nate.
All right. I know this is right. All right. Hopefully tests are running somewhere. All right.
Holy
The one that
cats, it
was there.
failed.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. All right.
Well, you wrote it, so I guess I need to fix this.
Okay.
Well, there's your
We will.
problem. We're hard coding a 7.
Yeah.
So let's return to 14.
All right.
That's my version of like before you introduced evil pairing to me. That's what I thought you meant was just
Oh, sure.
as the person making the test pass, doing the
Yeah.
simplest thing that could do it.
Yeah.
So that's not going to work. Oh man, you give me the heavy lifting. So let's see. We're going to need to break apart the frames. So let's do that. I'm not hip to the streaming stuff yet
Were
in
you
Java. So
right? I'm
const,
seeing const there. I suspect you
yeah,
might have been programming in JavaScript. This
I was
this is
I
probably going to be
was
a jarring. This
this
might be a
morning.
jarring transition, right?
String array, frame 1 roles. I'm still like, I'm not bothering at this point to write good code, just code that'll make it pass. And hopefully we'll figure out better after that.
Mm-hmm.
I will mention to those playing from home that the kata explicitly states that no error handling is we're using right, and it can't be a character. It has to be a string.
I'm not sure what's up with that colon there. Again, might have been.
Yeah,
might be the transition.
That's some
might be a
TypeScript.
transition. Yeah.
That's some TypeScript.
Yeah. Why did we do this to ourselves?
I know we're working in TypeScript right now, and we're like,
I know,
yeah,
right?
let's do Java.
Why not, right?
Array type expected. Well, that's it. Oh, because it's a list.
Yeah.
Derp. Get.
There we go.
That's your. I got your Java. I got your Java.
You bet.
I'm a senior, Nate. Let's see.
I think what I was saying earlier about Rocky Start might apply.
There's there's also,
I
yeah,
mean, we're
like
picking up speed here, though.
we are. So let's see, we've got, so now we have all four numbers. I say
Yep.
we just add them.
Yep. Well, we've got
And yeah,
two numbers
um,
because we're grabbing, right?
oh,
We're
wait,
grabbing the first, right? We're grabbing the first from the list. I mean, I like what you're throwing down. And if, yeah, this is going to be interesting. I'll let you finish your thought here because I don't think this is quite what we're after, right?
oh no, this won't help with our second case at all.
I've got concerns about the first case, but we'll
You've
get
got
there.
concerns about the first case.
Yeah,
Uh-oh.
I do. I do.
Oh yeah. Good call. I see
Yeah,
where
because
you're.
I think we're about
Yep,
to stub the first throws from
that first throw is gonna
either
fail, isn't
frame.
it?
Yep, and
Yep.
yeah, yes, and maybe I got the bowling. It's like for those playing along at home, right? Like Sean and I were chatting because we're going to get to talk about feeling vulnerable here in a few minutes, right? And I was like, well, I mean, I suppose I could showcase being vulnerable by doing a webinar on bowling after never have actually bowled a frame that wasn't a kiddie version of the game. So if you hear me talking about um, not being sure what bowling lexicon is, that's why.
So will this actually, okay, so it does work for the second frame,
Yeah,
which is clearly what I was thinking of when I was writing it.
right.
So yeah, so we need to say,
So
so we need
what what
to,
what what are we doing here with, like, what do we want the outcome of this to be? Because we have like a green test and then something that fares horribly and terrifying. I've lost in
yeah,
all of this wonderful chat, I've lost sight of what we're after with this next bit of code. Now I see what you're doing, and I like it, and I'm going to let you improvise, and I'm going to be quiet for, well, not be totally quiet. I've got some I've got some concerns about 14 and 16, but you're in the middle of another thought, so I'm not going to distract. I'm not going to distract you more than I already have, and will continue as I attempt to facilitate this. All right, so frame.
I'm doing TypeScript again, aren't I?
Yes,
String
it's quite
frame
possible you're doing TypeScript. Yep,
in
and then frames.
then
There we
frames.
go.
So yeah, what I'm thinking here is I was starting to think of, oh, well, we just need to do the first frame. Then we need to check if the second frame exists
Yeah.
before doing that. And then I leapt to, oh, that's silly. Let's just iterate over.
Right. Okay, so yeah, so now we've got, right, so now we have a frame object that
So
that contains the result of two throws, right?
yeah.
So
So
what if we took,
string, yeah, what you got?
I was wondering, I've got a few, are we going to go after some kind of accumulator at this point? Like, is that the next step in our adventure? Because we could lift 13 and 15 into our loop, right? And
Mhm.
then we can accumulate on that and then return that bear.
Yeah,
We can return that object, to use more specifics,
I was
for value.
thinking simpler than a formal accumulator.
Okay.
But just maybe we're talking the same thing.
Yeah.
I was thinking just
Yeah.
initialize an int to
Do it.
0.
Do it. Make it happen, Captain.
0. And then we would say So we still need to split frame,
Right.
split on string of this, and that needs to get saved to something. So let's
What
make,
are we, so when we do that split, right?
yeah,
On one hand, I wonder if I should okay, I'm gonna back off a little bit and see what you're doing here. Because you might be going a different way than I expected.
oh,
And and
well,
and
where are you
and
expecting? It might be better.
I should, so at this point, I need to do a time check, and we should probably only give this about another minute or
Okay,
so, because I've got some, this is me trying to keep commitments
yeah,
uh, that I've made.
so let's cut this. Parse int, throw array 1. And I know this will cause problems as soon as we only have one throw, or shoot, as soon as we try spares, but this will get us past our current issue. And that's gonna look like return total. And hopefully this will work for both existing cases. Boom.
Yay! Nailed it. All right. So thank you. Let's go back. So yeah, speaking of another jarring transition, so thank you, Sean, for joining us. Let's go back to our regularly scheduled Zoom program, and hopefully I disconnect. So hopefully I just disconnect from our sharing tool and not from the Zoom meeting. Let's see how this goes. All right, gonna stop. So I'm stopping the sharing on code editor and going back to web browser. All right, and now getting Zoom tool out of the way. All right, so again, thank you, Sean. Okay, so I made this promise that I was gonna tie in pair programming to great teams. Now, I'll let you decide for yourself what your definition of a great team is, aside from saying that a great team is also a high performing team. And you could imagine, again, me continuing the trend of I'm going to punt whatever a high performing team is to your standards and your metrics. I want to talk about how pair programming contributes to your vision of your goals and your team's performance. We know that collaborative problem solving and learning is a big part of pairing, as is breaking down knowledge silos. You can probably already imagine where this is going to go, but let's dig a little bit deeper into this. All right. So I'm taking ideas from a book that Daniel Coyle wrote called Culture Code. And in that book, Daniel talks about three things: psychological safety, shared vulnerability, and shared purpose and vision. So let's go through these one by one. Psychological safety. Now, just a quick call out, in all of these slides, the bullets on the bottom, these here, are taken from the book. It just so happens that they also occur in pair programming. Now, as you might have noticed, one thing that we certainly did is put a spotlight on fallibility. In any interaction, we have a natural tendency to try to hide our weaknesses and appear competent. If you want to create safety, this is exactly the wrong move. Instead, you should open up, show you make mistakes, and invite input with simple phrases like, "This is just my 2 cents," or, "Well, I could be wrong in here," or, "Hey, we're doing a bowling app, and I've never bowled a serious game in my life." And then, so having built some amount of psychological safety, then what can we do? Then we begin to share vulnerability. And why does this and like why does this matter? You know, it's we're telling folks, especially as leaders, that it's okay to have weaknesses and ask for help. Right? This is what we want in stand up on an agile team. Every morning for sure, and probably throughout the day as people get blocked. We want you asking for help, yo. And hopefully we trust one another that we can do this. And again, you can see some things, some bullets down there that I think tie into pair programming. And one that might be a little bit confusing is listen like a trampoline. That's something that Daniel talks about in his book. And the idea is effective listeners aren't passive sponges. They're active responders, absorbing what the other person gives, supporting them, and adding energy to help the conversation and gain velocity and altitude, right? So here's a little something that I do, and those of you that collaborate closely with me probably know what this two-word phrase is that I say often. So if somebody says something that you agree with, say yes. By saying yes, you actually say so many things. You say, I'm listening. How much have I talked about? How much have I talked about? A big part of what we do here is listening and talking. So if I say yes to something you've said, I tell you, hey, you have my attention. I'm focused in on what you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying. I'm validating your perspective. This is a safe place. You're okay here. And then if I have something that I want to add to the conversation, I follow that yes with an and to signify again and to reinforce. I heard you, I agree with you, and now I have something that I would like to contribute to that. And I would say that saying that having these interactions not only increases the energy and the perspective, but what I think it also really does, right, is that it helps avoid a crosstalk, right? Where people are real, like how many times have you been in a conversation where people are really saying the same thing, but they don't really agree that they actually, right? They haven't realized that they actually agree with each other, right? So if you're practicing effective listening and following that up with maybe it's not yes and, maybe there's something else that you say to demonstrate to somebody else quickly, I hear you, I support you, this is a good talk, you belong here and you're safe here. It just so happens that I do it with yes and. All right, so pair programming is part of agile or extreme programming methodology, right? So in it, the pairs work on adding working software that solves a problem for the user. To be maximally effective, the pairs should be aware of the business and user context in which they're writing software. The pairs talk about solving problems in the context of the product vision, right? One of the things, like, so for example, right, when Sean and I were doing the bowling kata, I was doing my best to like adopt and like talk about the bowling lexicon, even though having not bowled, right? Because like that's important. That puts us into the context, right? And like in terms of building great software, what are we doing? Like you saw the variable names that we were using. We're peppering our code with variables that mean something to the user and to the person writing it, right? With the hopes that in case these two people ever need to collaborate, right, it's all right there. And maybe they can't read the code, but maybe somebody that, but they can see what a frame is, and they know what the frames and throws are, and they can probably figure it out, right? And so, in addition to the constant attention to code quality and standards, we're focusing not only on the task at hand, right, but that bigger context around which we are writing code. And so often, right, that bigger context is shipping software. And so often that software that we're going to ship, which is what we're collaborating on, right, is part of an organizational goal or part of what the organization is about, right? The whole thing reinforces like what we are as humans coming into to I guess, gesticulate wildly and collaborate on writing great software, and then tying that back to the mission, the vision of that organization, and bringing everything together. And pair programming, as I think I've demonstrated, is a big part of that. All right, in summary, 3 things that we've covered: the benefits of pair programming best practices, and signs of healthy pair programming. Thank you for joining us today. Hopefully you learned about these things. Thank you to Sean Frost for hopping in there with me and rumbling through some code in the webinar today. If there's any questions, please go ahead. We've got about five minutes left. I'll stay on for a little while. If anybody has questions, drop them in chat. Thank you for your time and attention.